If that's true, then you must know my mother's maiden name. What is it? What is it?
While the late 80s was remembered for being the decade of satanic panic, the late 60s and early 70s helped ramp up that fear among many Christians. Films like Rosemary's Baby and The Omen scared the hell out of audiences, but one film stands alone as the scariest sacrilege-themed horror film. Originally released on December 26, 1973, The Exorcist is still remembered to this day as one of the scariest movies of all time. The film follows a 12-year-old girl named Regan, who gets possessed by a demon named Pazuzu. The girl's mother gets Regan medical attention, but to no avail. She ultimately ends up turning to a priest and asks him to perform an exorcism. Can he save Regan from the clutches of Pazuzu, or will the demon prevail? Upon release, The Exorcist almost immediately generated a reputation as one of the most terrifying films of all time. People lined up and down the street waiting in line to see the film. There were claims that audience members were fainting and even vomiting during screenings. There is still discussion to this day as to whether or not The Exorcist is one of the scariest films ever made. The fact this discourse is even still happening to this day just goes to show the impact this film's made. Personally, I would have to argue that The Exorcist is not the scariest film ever made. If anything, I find it to be more depressing and heartbreaking to watch. Seeing Regan go from just a normal 12-year-old girl to a demonic foul-mouthed vessel for a demon is just sad to see. Especially when you hear her crying out in pain and screaming. It's really distressing. One moment that always gets to me is the scene in which a statue of the Virgin Mary is found desecrated. I'm a Catholic, and this scene just makes me extremely uncomfortable. I'm not offended by it, as it serves the story and it benefits the film as a whole. But the imagery in and of itself is just so shocking to see. While it may not be the scariest film of all time, The Exorcist is still one of the best films to come out of the 70s. The visuals are stunning, the music is harrowing, the performances are all Oscar-worthy, with Linda Blair giving a standout performance here. You have to remember that she was only 14 years old at the time. There's also two different cuts of The Exorcist. There's the theatrical cut and the 2000 re-release version with about 10 extra minutes of footage. I'd recommend the theatrical cut, as the constant inserts of Pazuzu are really distracting. It's also just a better version of the film. It's more concise. So give the theatrical cut a watch, if you can find it. Also, I want to know, do you think The Exorcist is the scariest movie of all time? If it isn't, then what other film is? Let me know down below in the comments.
Huh?